Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and this is the Storyteller forecast for Sagittarius for March 2017. Go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, see what's new on my blog. I've gone blog crazy for the Venus retrograde transit. Lots of resources there, and see if there are still slots left in my astrology apprenticeship program and my other courses. So what's going on in March? We've got the clash of the Titans, aspects with Jupiter and Libra. Jupiter in Libra with Uranus, aspects with Jupiter and Pluto. Both of these clashes are second chapters of stories that started at the end of the year. There's still more to come in the year with these. We also have the astrological new year beginning, including the astrological new year kickoff party, which is the new moon in Aries on March 27th. So we'll talk about all of that. The highlight of this reading specific for Sagittarius is going to be based around where Venus is going retrograde for your sign. When a planet goes retrograde, we experience, or any planetary transit, we experience that in the sign, which is a global experience. So Venus will be retrograde from 13 degrees of Aries back to 26 degrees of Pisces. Everyone will experience what it's like to have Venus in retrograde in Aries and Pisces. But where in your houses that matches up for your sign, that brings it down more personal to you. So I'm going to talk about what that looks like for the early, middle, and late degree Sag placements, and then we'll talk about the general transits. So the theme of the month for Sagittarius, and this is also the affirmation I have for you for this month. I look upon the past with eyes of forgiveness and a heart full of gratitude. So I look upon the past with eyes of forgiveness and a heart full of gratitude. The reason why I created this affirmation for you is because the retrograde is going to be focused for most of you on the fourth house. Now, if you study astrology, you may have the question, why, if Venus is retrograde in Aries and Aries rules the fifth house for Sages, is the retrograde transit occurring in the fourth house? This is advanced astrology, and I have this come up a lot for people who study but don't really know horoscope charts well. Just because a transit is occurring in a sign doesn't mean that that sign is going to be predominant in the house that is ruled by that sign, okay? So the fifth house is ruled for Sages is ruled by Aries, technically. But depending on what degrees we're talking about and depending on what degree of your Sag placement, that might not be true and accurate. So only the very early degree placements are going to have any piece of this Venus retrograde in the fifth house. And you will, some of the very early first couple of days, first couple of degrees, you'll have part of this transit, just a small part of this transit in the fifth house. But since most of you are not going to experience that, I'm not going to go into great detail about that, but I do want to send you to my blog to read Venus retrograde through the signs and houses and see, if you're in that smaller percentage, what the fifth house retrograde could look like for you. Most of you are going to have this happen in the fourth house. All early degree placements, even the very early ones, middle degree placements, you're going to have all or part of this retrograde in the fourth house. The middle degree placements will also experience some of this retrograde in the third house, and the late degree placements will have it in the third house. So if your birthday is in the first 10 days of the sign or first 10 degrees for your rising sign, you're early. Second 10 days or degrees, middle. Last 10 days or degrees, that's late. Venus rules love, beauty, and money. So everything involving love, beauty, money, design, anything like that, art, is going to come up as a global experience for Venus retrograde. Now, applying that to the fourth house can look something like this. The fourth house is about home and family. So any financial matters as they relate to home and family, investments, things of value that were passed on from your family. If you work in a line of business that rules homes or building homes or selling homes or renting homes or designing homes, there's very likely going to be a focus on your finances returning back. If you have to grow your business during this time, or if you notice that business is waning, it's not always the best time during a retrograde to try to get new business with people you've never met. You'll have more of a fruitful finding when you look backwards to clients who have already bought with you, people from the past. If you're looking for a job in a new profession and you're having trouble, finding a job from something from the past, etc. It's leaning towards the past. So childhood events, since the fourth house rules home and family, also rules childhood. Childhood events are likely to come up as echoes from the past, for better and worse. So it's not a great time to sell items of value if you can help it, but it is a great time if you're a bargain hunter to pick up items of value, because people who aren't seeing clearly because of Venus retrograde will be not watching my videos and selling things like crazy. So I've got some criteria on my Venus retrograde do's and don'ts blog and video as to how you can determine if it's a good time to sell something during, buy something during a retrograde. And there's lots of other information there. Renovation is not as much favored during this time, although you might have an urge to do something different with your house. It's not a good time to renovate only because it's not a good time to design. The actual renovation aspect is not really, except for the money and the design aspect of a renovation project are what is called into question here. That's what retrogrades do. They call things into question. So often designs that you choose during a Venus retrograde are things that you look back after and say, what was I thinking? So, it's a good time to make a poster board of designs of how you'd like your house to look and things that you like. But to hold off until the planets are more clear, really into the end of May, before you make your final decisions about your design choices. A lot of times things can come up with mother when Venus is retrograde in the fourth house, because the fourth house is the house of mother. So either you're mothering, your mother, something having to do with maternal energy in your life. Some questions to ask during this transit, or questions that will naturally come up even if you don't purposely ask them. How is your childhood affecting, limiting, accentuating your current relationships? Does a family member need you? What can you do to support that family member while having a healthy relationship with them? Do you need help from a family member? How can you set up receiving assistance in a way that honors both parties? How can you create more coherence in your home space? It is a wonderful time for reorganizing and sprucing up in ways that don't cost any or a lot of money. So cleaning up, organizing, straightening, adding more coherence is really the word that I like to use for that. Also, how can you make money from past investments involving homes, houses, and family money? So these are all good times to ask the questions that lean towards the past. Anything involving, so resources for this transit for Sagittarius. Any counseling, individual or family, especially those that involve healing trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. I love the modality EMDR for this. This is a modality that has been made more popular and mainstream by the use of it with war veterans for their post-traumatic stress disorder. Many people don't experience what war veterans have experienced. However, our subjective experience of trauma still affects us in a negative way, and it can limit us and our relationships and our finances. So this is a really good time to clear up things like that from the past. Doing simple things to help return the magic to current relationships and into your home space. If you've had all work and no play in your home space, having more fun would be a really good idea. If you've had too much fun and you need to straighten things up, and get a little more organized and have more of a plan or a routine, maybe that's how that retrograde will affect you. There's a wonderful book called Radical Forgiveness, and this correlates with this affirmation that I have for you. I look upon the past with eyes of forgiveness and a heart full of gratitude. This book, Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping, is a wonderful way to reframe how you view your relationships and to shift them into more coherence. Coherence is a word that I use a lot because there's chaos and there's coherence. And coherence helps us to improve our experience with life. So for the middle degree placements, you will have part of your transit in the fourth house. The rest of it you'll have in the third house, and all the late degree placements, you'll have this Venus retrograde through the third house. So for you, some great questions to explore are, is how you are communicating, getting you to where you want to be. So, or how are you communicating at work? How are you communicating in your relationships? How you're communicating with your creative expression. The third house rules communication, and Venus rules money, and it also rules relationships. So it's looking to the past to see historically what has worked, what's not working, and try to revise your communication. Are there opportunities with your relatives, including step relatives, especially siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, etc.? The third house rules these relatives. Basically people who are related to you who aren't your parents or kids are in this house. Although from the Venus retrograde in the fourth house, many of you will have things come up with parents because you can find them in the home space and children as well. How are you spending money as it relates to your devices for communication? Are you spending way too much? Are you not spending enough? Are there ways that you can maximize using your communication devices for your highest expression? Many people have iPads or other devices and they don't know how the heck to use them. So this would be a really good time to learn how to use them for their optimal purpose with whatever that happens to be for you. Also, how are you spending money or using money relating to vehicles and transportation? Are you spending way too much in your car? Do you need to have a lower payment to have more happiness in your life? Or do you want to upgrade your car? Do you want to take public transportation? Questions about money and relationships as it relates to communication and transportation are what is coming up for you. So the resources that I recommend for this transit, one is called Nonviolent Communication, and this is by Marshall Rosenberg. This book is my favorite resource for communication because it helps to create win-win circumstances with those who you are usually having trouble with. This guy puts people in the same room, who are warring with each other on various levels, sometimes physically warring with each other. And he uses this communication support to help people be heard and to hear others and to get a win-win out of the circumstance. So if you're noticing that your communication could be improved, this is one resource for this transit for you. Taking courses or any other education or research on how you can maximize your devices and your transportation modes to most benefit you are definitely in order. Now note that this is a really great time for research and for doing things like taking a class that is not expensive or just simple things. It's very well indicated. It's not necessarily the time to buy a car unless it reaches, it includes my criteria that I put in the Venus retrograde do's and don'ts blog. I have criteria as to, how you can gauge your personal situation with the retrograde. So the affirmation for y'all for this Venus retrograde through the third house is, I spill love with every thought, every look, every word. So you can see these affirmations that I write for you on my Instagram account if you want pretty visuals of them to help support your work. So now I want to talk about Jupiter opposing Uranus, squaring Pluto. Where are the opportunities? What can we do with them? What is the theme for the general transits and how you can max these out and how you can use the best day of the year, March 27th, for your new moon intentions. Definitely watch my video, Making Wishes Come True using astrological power periods. If you just search for Making Wishes Come True, Annie, it should come up. And this will talk about, how you can use a vision board for this very powerful day of the year. So we'll go into some other things about the general transits now. So I'm calling the theme of the month for the general transit, so this is relevant for all signs. Summon your inner badass. And what I imagine when I'm seeing the energies of March all coming together is a hero that is walking through a scene that we're observing, and there are difficulties coming at them, and they're standing tall and strong and confident and moving through and being triumphant at the end of the challenges. Every month brings challenges and opportunities and sweet spots. I see challenges always as opportunities. So a month that has more challenges in some ways can be a month full of more opportunities. We have started to ask wrong questions in our lives, I think, or questions that cause us to experience life in a disempowered way. when we ask questions, what's going to happen in the stars that's going to stress me out, or tell me what's going to happen, these are disempowered questions. The questions we want to be asking astrology and in general is, help me understand what's going on here so that I can maximize the potentials for my highest expression. And that's what I focus on. So I want to help you ask different questions, and that's part of summoning your inner badass, because the more empowered questions you ask, the more of an empowered life you will live. So we've got multiple important aspects going on this month, and I'm going to go through them and how I think that we can most use them. There are also some lesser aspects that you definitely will feel, sweet days, challenging days, etc. A longer list of those that you can get when you sign up for my free email newsletter at anniehelpsyou.com. You'll get my monthly write-up, which includes a written version of the things that I touch on in the horoscope for the general transits, and it also includes more things that I don't have time to talk about. So if you have signed up for my email newsletter and you're not receiving it, it could be in your spam or social or events folders, because I do send them out every month. Okay, so the first aspect of the month is March 2nd, and this is Jupiter in Libra opposing Uranus in Aries, and this is happening at 20 degrees. So if you have planets near the 20 degrees, you're probably you're going to be affected more than these aspects without them, but globally everyone will still be experiencing this. So that expression, things come in threes, is astrological, and that's because often things that we're experiencing come from aspects in the sky, and these ones that are big long-term themes, they usually involve what I call the titans, the outer planets. It's like a sumo match between these planets that just carry a massive amount of power and a massive amount of potential. So when you have Jupiter, an outer planet, and Uranus, an outer planet, coming together in what could be considered a challenging aspect called an opposition, they're trying to find balance. An opposition is two opposing forces. They're antagonistic, but they can also become synergistic. So the more you can transcend whatever the issue is, the more those planets will work in synastry. So Jupiter wants to expand, and Uranus wants to innovate. Libra is the planet of the sign of we, and Aries is the sign of me. So we've got a me-we aspect of a theme trying to get things worked out that started at the end of December. And this is in March 2nd, it's the second pass. And then on September 27th, we have the final part of the story. These are like chapters in a story that are ongoing. So it's some sort of breaking free from constraints in relationships. And that's basically the theme. So we might perceive someone as limiting us, or someone might be perceiving us as limiting them. And maybe that is true. But what's probably more true is that we have limitations within us as far as how we can experience relationship, and we project that limitation on all of our relationships because it's coming from the inside. So you have an opportunity here to break free from your pattern within yourself, so you can stop enslaving your partner to play a certain role, and you can stop being attractive to those circumstances that are unfulfilling for you. So that's very exciting. So then on March 4th, we have Venus going retrograde. We've been talking about this for a while because the shadow period started at the end of January. And this transit only happens once every 18 months, and there's a lot that goes along with it. So definitely check out my Venus retrograde do's and don'ts blog and video. I'm also writing some other extensive Venus retrograde blogs that you can look for on my website, anniehelpsyou.com. And the basic gist of Venus retrograde is that Venus, we call Venus the triple goddess because she rules love, beauty, and money. So beauty also includes aesthetics in your environment, art, design, fashion, appearance, things like that. So she's going backwards, and when she goes backwards, it's a time to reconsider everything about love, beauty, and money. It's a time to go back to old ideas, old things that worked, old clients. Many people will revisit previous relationships. People who are staying in the same relationship will revisit topics that came up in the past, for better and worse. Venus retrograde is not just a time where unresolved conflicts can come up, although that is definitely a theme. Anything swept under the rug in love, beauty, or money will come back up to be looked at. But it's also a time where lots of magic can return to those areas of life. You can find money. You can have love return to a relationship where it had left. You know, you can find some riches with your self-esteem development, which is another important topic for this retrograde. So we've got that going on from March 4th through April 15th. And it's going to be retrograde from 13 degrees of Aries back to 26 degrees of Pisces. So in the, we talked about where the Venus retrograde is taking place in the house for your sign. For all signs, we will experience Venus retrograde in Aries, which is similar to the first house, or is the same as the first house retrograde, and 26 degrees of Pisces, which is the same as the 12th house retrograde. So depending on where your placements were for your sign, you might be having the same themes come up, or you might be having some additional themes come up. But the general story of Venus in Aries has to do with self-esteem. It's talking about appearance, fashion, you know, how you put yourself out into the world. Pisces has to do with hidden places. So this is a place where this hidden money can come to you, money that you didn't know that you had, or that you hid from yourself, or that was in the backdrop somehow. You know, it's just stuff from the past involving love, beauty, and money. That's the basic gist of Venus retrograde. So then on March 12th, we have a full moon at 22 degrees of Virgo. And full moons, the best way to manage full moons, I think, is to leave some space around them, because full moons are a time when our emotions just sort of shake off. You know, everything that we've been accumulating for the month coming to fullness is just a time to shake it off, like a dog shakes off water, you know? So often there's something dramatic, or there's something really cool going on that you want to be present for, you know? So I usually keep a little space around the full moons for whenever these manifestations come up, because the best way to deal with them is to be present with them. So Virgo rules health, your daily work, it rules pets. So it's possible that something involving those things could come to your attention, or need attention, or come up as a focus at this time. The full moon is also making quite a lot of aspects, opposing Mercury and Chiron, trining Pluto, and squaring Saturn. So we've got a lot of power at this full moon, I think, to overcome the energy of woundedness. And this is going to be a theme this month because of aspects with Chiron. Chiron is an asteroid that is called the Wounded Healer. And the idea of the Wounded Healer, or my understanding of the Wounded Healer, and as I've observed it through countless charts, is that it's a place of weakness. That deep place where if someone gets at that, then you don't know what comes out. It gets ugly, you know? It's a very wounded place, or a very weak place for you. So the idea of Chiron, the highest vibration, is that you strengthen, you focus your attention on that weakness or that vulnerability, and it becomes a strength. So that's the transcendent version. So like in the instance of the energy in Virgo rules health. Maybe some people have health weaknesses. Maybe they have to work harder to attain health. And when that happens, they might wind up being healthier and staving off other health issues because they had a weakness that made them focus on their health. And if they didn't have that meticulous focus, then they could have created other problems maybe, or maybe they wind up teaching or helping people from it, or improving the lives of others because of what they've had to go through. So this is just an example of how you can take any woundedness that comes up this month or ever and convert it into something positive and powerful and supportive. So on March 20th, we have the beginning of the astrological new year. I never feel like the new year is starting on January 1st, especially when it's in the midst of a retrograde like it was this year and some other years. So March is when the planets start to move into Aries, and the planet of Aries, or the sign of Aries, is the baby of the zodiac. It's that bursting forth, that energy of spring, something new beginnings. So you'll see as the planets are moving into this sign, people get impulsive, they get excited, they get wild, they want to do stuff, they feel active. And this is the energy of New Year. So on March 27th, we have the new moon in Aries, and I always consider the new moon in Aries to be like the kickoff party for the new year. It's like the new year starts around March 20th, and then when the new moon in Aries comes, it's like, yay, okay, it's a new year, let's have a party. That's like New Year's Eve, So this new moon in Aries, all all the new moons in Aries, so the one new moon that we have in Aries a year, is the best time of the whole year besides your birthday, to do vision boards or other seed planting for your future, things that you want in that upcoming year. So definitely take full advantage of that. This new moon also carries a lot of power. It's conjunct Chiron and Venus. It's a square Saturn, and it's coinciding with a Mars in Taurus and Neptune sextile, which is a 60-degree angle. It's a positive angle. So there's, again, a lot of power behind this moon phase. On March 30th, we have our last big aspect of the month, which is the second Jupiter square with Pluto. Similar to how we've been talking about this Jupiter opposition with Libra, how it happened once last year, so did this Jupiter and Pluto aspect. And this one's happening at 19 degrees. On November 24th of last year, this Jupiter and Pluto first pass happened. Now on March 30th, the second pass happens. And then on August 4th, the last pass will happen. So we've got these 3 chapters of this ongoing story. And one of the main themes, I think, of this ongoing story has to do with ambitions, rising ambitions, and the idea of competition and what we have to do, or what we're willing to do, or what we think we have to do to succeed. In a third dimensional reality, there is competition. There's focus on competition. And there are all of the energies that go along with competition. It's kind of gross, you know? It can be very, very low vibe and not conducive to conscious evolution to focus too much on the energy of competition. My suggestion, I invite you to use this energy to transcend competition and tune into divine timing and your divine path and purpose. So if you're out there doing what you're supposed to be doing and you feel like Spirit is guiding you and you're on track and you're speaking your truth or doing your truth, then it doesn't really matter what anyone else is doing. You will attract to you the people and the customers that will be perfect for you. And so really there's no competition on the spiritual plane. And this is an affirmation from Florence Scovel Shinn, who is one of my all-time favorite teachers. She's not in form anymore that I know of. She wasn't even when she came to me. She had passed a long time ago. So she was teaching about, she was actually teaching about Jesus's work as a metaphysician, teaching about transcending mundane reality while still in form, like bringing heaven onto earth in our experience. And that is an affirmation I got from her. So there's no competition on the spiritual plane. So if you are conducting yourself in a way that is high vibrational, if you are doing everything that is in sync with your beliefs and your values, then you can transcend this energy, you know? So you just check in with yourself and see how this is true for you, and just look out for it, because these themes are sometimes very subtle. You know, sometimes they come more into the forefront, but overall they're very subtle sometimes. So these are the main things that I am seeing for the month for the general transit. So you have plenty of opportunities to summon your inner badass. Definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. Check out my blogs. I have blogs on all different kinds of topics, not just astrology. If you want to learn astrology with me, then I might still have some slots available in my astrology apprenticeship program. If you want to bring your business online, check out my Creating Successful Online Business course. And if you would like to be a coach as your profession, then you can check out my coach certification course. So I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.